Lo and behold, a miracle. For the first time in a long time, there was any form of seafood that was on sale, and you managed to get a bag of shrimp for $5. However, you have just got yourself into a long haul situation as you got the unpeeled shrimp, which means you're in for a rough journey. So, now that they're in a bowl, we're going to have to compensate for the fact that they're shrimp by adding some garlic salt. The deal is, you can't take any risks when dealing with shellfish. As such, you're going to have to thaw them out the old-fashioned way by putting them in a bowl with water, putting them in your fridge, and letting it happen slowly. Now, we're also going to be pairing this with some potatoes, purely based on the fact that that's what's available, and as we all know, cheap foods pair very well with expensive ones. Yep, just make sure all of them are covered. That's how you make sure they all thaw at roughly the same rate. And into the fridge they go. Now we have our potatoes. I would recommend only making as many as you want to eat in one sitting. So in this case, these are relatively small potatoes, so I'm just going to go ahead and use 2 of them. What you're going to want to do is just cut them into fourths and then dice them. At that point, that's small enough you can actually cook them in a skillet and still have them be finished at a reasonable time. Yep, usually though, if you're dealing with a meal where you get to use something fancy like shrimp, it's nice to have someone to eat with, but unfortunately that's just not a reality in your world right now, and let's be honest, it's probably never going to be at this rate. Perfect. One thing that's rough about cooking potatoes in a pan is it requires a lot of stirring and flipping, purely based on the fact that it will burn on one side if you let it sit there for the entire cooking process. But that's part of the fun. There's a learning curve to it. Alright, so we have our little pile of potatoes. Now we get to the star of the show, and we get to get our shrimp out of the fridge and begin the long and arduous process of peeling. I want you to understand, this will be the worst part of the process. After I fix my light bulb, because unfortunately it's flickery. Alright, the game begins. So whenever you're peeling shrimp, what you're going to want to do is they've already cracked the back when they were deveining them. So what you want to do is you just want to take the bottom here, you pinch it, it should all peel off pretty easy, and then you just squeeze the tail to get that last little chunk of meat out, and just like that you've separated the meat from the exoskeleton. That right there is what you're after. Now just to do that 40-something more times. You know what, I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video because this is going to take all day if I wait. So let's see how fast we can make this go. Rolling, rolling, rolling. Now in case you're wondering how long this actually took, this is this segment at 20 times speed, and it still feels like it goes on forever. But that's also part of the journey. That's part of the reason why this bag was $5 as opposed to having to spend $8.50 on the shrimp that was already peeled. So, we now have our shrimp, we now have our potatoes. Now we have to actually find what we're going to cook them in and what we're going to season them with. Now, here we have our bacon. I would recommend using about 3 slabs in your bigger skillet. Once that gets to the point where you can flip it over and you have some grease in the pan, you want to go ahead and add your potatoes. I'm also going to go ahead and speed up this segment just to save everyone some time. You want to make sure all of your potatoes here are in contact with the skillet. They will not cook as well if they're just sitting on top of the bacon. Excellent, excellent. So yeah, this is pretty much just playing a waiting game, looking at it by ear, getting your potatoes to the right level of brownness for what you want. The biggest deal is you should be able to go through it, bite it, and it feels like it came out of the oven, but just better. Unfortunately, if it was in the oven, it would have taken significantly less time, and I wouldn't have to play this video at, I think, 4 times speed. All right, we're making good progress. There we go. See, that's the browning you want on your potatoes. So we're going to go ahead and stir that up a little bit. Make sure we get all of them having a little bit of bacon grease on them. That way they have at least a chance to cook nice. All right, flip up the pan a little bit. The deal is you want to make sure nothing sticks, because at that point it goes from browning to burning, and that's a problem for everybody. All right, looks like our bacon is just about done, which means it's time to add our shrimp. Now, when we add our shrimp, we want to actually add our seasoning here. And I would recommend something that pairs better with the potatoes, because shrimp are so flavorless that they'll be able to do whatever they want regardless. But let's be honest, you buy shrimp for the texture, not the flavor. The seasoning I just used here was a pretty standard big meat seasoning that you would use on relatively large cuts of beef or on potatoes, which happens to be perfect for this. Now, we're not going to get any more grease out of our bacon, so let's go ahead and have our little pre-meal snack. Pop those suckers out of there while everything else is getting caught up. Alrighty. Now, while you're eating your bacon, you just want to, take it slow, let it think. This is where it's going to be more or less stewing in its own ideas for a while. Has that nice little bit of red seasoning for some coloration, gives it a little bit of depth. The bacon grease is making sure that everything has a very good flavor regardless, because let's be honest, it's bacon. See, like I said, this is a good meal, but it's the kind of meal that's best shared with someone. If you're eating this by yourself, it's kind of depressing because you're eating something really good, but you're eating it alone. But that also means you don't have to share. Yep, when it's finished, you just want to scoop out all the potatoes with however much shrimp you want, and the rest of the shrimp can just go into the fridge for your next meal. All right, and this is what the finished plate looks like.